All right, all right. LDWMMAC. This is your boy, Coach Sheldon Harrison, live, live, live on the Coach Sheldon Harrison Combat Sports Show live. And guys, in the live stream today, I got none other than man. Just saying this name just gets me. Look, I got Mr. Ray Elbe here on the live stream. Ray, what is up, man?
Yo, what up, coach? Man, you've been out there grinding, man. Thanks for the love. We appreciate the support over here at Cyborg Nation. And man, we listen to the channel regularly, so you're doing something right.
Man, I can't. The champ and Ray Elbe. Listen to man. I get choked up, man. I just try to be real, man. I try to be real and tell it like it is, man. I try to.
Well, that's what we appreciate about your channel. You know, there's a lot of things out there that a channel like yours gives the ability for the story to get kind of unfiltered. You know, a lot of times there's people that when they're more mainstream media, they have to kind of keep their comments in line and they have to be censored and they don't want to lose access to the events that they're covering. So it is nice to see guys like you that are out there, you know, just grinding, plugging away because it's a passion and you see a need for the authenticity of organic traffic, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yep. I got to tell it, and I'm never gonna not tell it, man. I'm never not gonna go tell it. So I'm gonna say what I gotta say, man, and just keep it going, man. Well, guys, guys, Ray Ellaby is in the stream, and I know we got a lot of questions, man, in a short time for Mr. Ray Ellaby because a lot of things going on in MMA land. And it's a live stream. So if you notice me looking down, well, you've been into my live streams before. You're actually talking to everybody live, so they roll with you, man. They mess with you, man. Is
Nice. Pigs.
man, is Ray Ellaby, y'all. Okay, I'm gonna get past the shock. I'm gonna get past the shock and start really asking some questions because man, people just want to know, man, what the heck is going? So much is going on, man, with Cris and her testing free agency. Like, man, what's going on with her and possibly free agency?
You know, I don't really know as far as what's going to happen after the next fight. You know, her focus right now is July 27th. Felicia Spencer is a tough up and coming girl, undefeated, 7-0. If you kind of look at it, Cris vacated her Invicta Championship. And if you were in a position where you were able to keep, you know, belts from different promotions, this is kind of like the linear championship for the Invicta Championship, right?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
Wow. Yeah, she is. She's fighting 7-0 Spencer, man. And Spencer, she came off a pretty impressive win against Megan Anderson, man. So, what skill level wise, like, how do you think Cris and Felicia, like, what does Felicia bring to the table for this particular fight? If it's
Um, when you, when you've never lost, you don't know you can lose yet, right? Some of these girls go into the fight with Cris and they're already beat before they get into the fight because the idea that they're going against Cris Cyborg is so intimidating to them. But when you've never lost and you're undefeated and you're young and you've already had a little bit of UFC experience, that doesn't necessarily have the same type of influence over your mental capacity, right? Sometimes you can stay a little bit more focused with the experience that you've had. Gabby, get this pig out of the room, please. We have a gate. The gate's closed. This pig's not supposed to be in here. He's been out in the mud. Now he's getting mud on the carpet. Cris is gonna kill me if she comes in here and sees this pig in here.
yeah, you definitely want to keep the woman happy. Yeah, at all costs. Yeah, I wouldn't want Cris mad at me.
Yeah. So you know, I think Felicia Spencer is a super talented young up and comer. I don't know if she necessarily this is too soon for her or not. Um, you know, there's some holes in her game that I think she still needs to develop, but that's true with everybody at this level as far as having spots where, you know, their opponent's able to capitalize on them, right?
Yep, absolutely. And Spencer, I don't know if you picked up on it, man, but she like savagely called out Megan Anderson. It was crazy. But they kind of asked her after she beat Megan Anderson, "Hey, who do you want next?" And she goes, "Well, um, I'll fight whoever." That's what she said. I'm like, okay, so, I was kind of waiting on, like, say a name. Say a name. But she didn't call out Chris, but she did say, "Hey, I will fight. I'll fight whoever they put in front of me." So, I give her props for taking the fight because it's this is a tough. I mean, thinking I got to fight Chris Cyborg. I mean, do you think that puts a lot of stress on some of these fighters, like maybe Felicia?
I mean, I think for somebody like Felicia, she really hasn't had an opportunity to get the experience against a high level caliber of opponents, right? I mean, Megan Anderson is kind of considered her biggest win, maybe, but who knows how that fight with Kat Zingano could have turned out? And she very easily could be 0-3 in the UFC, instead of 1-2. Pam Sorensen, again, Pam Sorensen's tough, but like she's on a different level, right? You kind of got the Amanda Nunez, the Chris Cyborg, the Valentina Shevchenko, the Holly Holm, and then you got everybody else, you know?
Yeah, that's the echelon of the echelon of women's MMA, and those are the four that people talk about the most. And if you Google search women's MMA, the four names that you said they pop up. Now there'll be some questions thrown at you from the comment section, and that's why I like this version, this format, because it actually gives your fans too, a chance to even ask some of the questions that we've been wanting to know. Like, is it speculation? Okay, so Reggie. Okay, you're asking. Okay, so Reggie the Tree, and that's his name. He says, how glad are you about Chris not having to do these extreme weight cuts anymore?
I mean, that is something that the reality of it is those fights at 140 pounds, most fans kind of don't even really remember those fights. I mean, they're not marketed as super fights. They really weren't against named opponents. If you would have seen maybe her fights at 145, even if there was no division, just kind of as a Chris Cyborg super fight where she was kind of quote unquote defending the Invicta title because maybe the UFC didn't want to make a division. Um, then she's probably defended the title several more times than is actually on the record book. And you got to think too, those extreme weight cuts, that's part of the reason why Cyborg was not healthy enough to compete for that inaugural UFC belt. Jermaine Durandamy and Holly Holm ended up competing against each other for the inaugural. And people don't really think about that like that's a big deal.
Mm,
But Muhammad Ali, he goes around and he calls himself the greatest of all time, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And was he the greatest of all time? I mean, everybody's got their own opinion. Some people might say Mike Tyson. Some people might say, depending on who their favorite was at the time, right? He had several losses himself, right?
mm,
But the reason why people call or associate him with that is because he was the first one to say that. How many people have said, I float like a butterfly and sting like a bee since Muhammad Ali said that, right? But people remember you because you're the first person. And so, kind of one of those consequences about Chris doing those extreme weight cuts is she was so dominant, 13 years undefeated, but she never got the opportunity to be the first champion in a division that, I mean, she held down for so long, right?
mm.
So I think it's great that she's no longer having to do those extreme weight cuts. You notice in boxing, those women are able to compete at a much higher weight, closer to their walk around weight, even at
Yeah.
145. Chris is cutting a little bit of weight. I think long term, when you talk about CTE, damage to the brain, things like that, the more hydrated an athlete is, the more well preserved their body will be in the long run. I know everybody kind of thinks that there's nobody to fight at 145 pounds in the UFC. But now let's look at this 125-pound division that Valentina Shevchenko's
Hmm.
in. Dude, Jessica I just was the number one contender.
And she's still asleep, as rumor has it.
And it just wasn't a competitive matchup. And you now look through 1 through 10 on that. Okay, she's going to have Liz Carmouche, who they're going to market this as the only girl outside of Amanda Nunes to beat her. But if you watch that fight, that was
Referee
like
stoppage.
commission mistakes, right? I mean, there was some information translation. I don't know exactly what happened with that, but that wasn't a TKO in the sense that she was in a position she couldn't improve, she couldn't get out of there. You know, that was her fighting in America with very little English, and there's not many people in that division. And this girl now is going to get an opportunity to fight often. You know, she just fought. She's going to turn right back around, fight again at UFC Uruguay. She's going to turn right back around, fight again in a division that is really sure there's a top 10 in there.
Mm.
But that top 10, you look at a girl like Jessica I mean, she had lost 3 or 4 in a row at one point before dropping down to that division in bantamweight, right? So that division, for lack of a better term, is no more stacked than featherweight has ever been, you know?
Yeah, when you look at, I think there's a skill level, there's a definite skill level gap in the flyweight division. Like Valentina's up here, and those girls, they did what they had to do to get to the UFC. But Valentina is just, she's so much more skillful that it's almost like a woman playing with like little girls. That's what's happening in that division, and
I
I don't
mean, for a,
I don't
for a
think
long
anybody gonna whoop
time,
her ass.
that's why they said they wouldn't make the featherweight division because essentially there was no competition, right? But
Well,
you
well,
look
that's
at
a lie.
Valentina, they've made a division like Valentina that was made after 145, but it's already got rankings and it's already got a top 10. And you know, you're almost 2 years to when Cyborg had her first fight at 145, and there is no established rankings in that division. And it's not because there's no girls; it's just because the matches aren't taking place.
Well, yeah, and that and I kind of noticed, man, that when they had that show, for the featherweight division, they did all that work to promote it, and then you got Macy Chase on the winner. They moved her down to bantamweight, like, and it's like, okay, so why have that show and bring all these people in if we're not gonna put them in the division? Like, I mean, I don't understand. It just seems like the damnedest thing. And then the veterans, some of the veterans who they're still able-bodied to go fight, they took those people. They didn't even give those people a chance to actually compete anyway. They just brought them there, and then you cut. You know?
I mean, you've seen some good fights, like Larissa Pacheco from Brazil. She ended
Yeah.
up going and fighting Judo Kayla in PFL.
Yep.
Um,
Gave her a
Tammy
fight.
had some good fights. I mean, Macy Chase, and she actually lost as an amateur to Felicia Spencer. So I think though that there was some really good talent as far as Idion Gomez, some girls that had some good stories. Pam Sorensen, of course. Some of these fights have kind of played out in other promotions,
Zero dos
but
Santos, tough.
yeah. But I think that you know, it was disappointing to see that maybe some of the older talent didn't get picked, but it's a show, you know, and at the same time, they have to have characters and they got to fill roles. And so they went one direction with it instead of the other direction. But it certainly, I mean, for lack of a better word, it didn't build the 145 division, really. You
It
know what
didn't
I
do a
mean?
damn thing. It just it was kind of the biggest waste of space. And I'm like, damn, okay. So Chris, you and Chris tried to help promote this thing. You guys were there.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, Chris went down there. She actually took her time. She wanted to go down there and meet the girls, and she wanted to show some support because a lot of people thought that there probably wouldn't even be enough girls to show up to like have a selection process. And they had quite a few girls show up to the casting call in Las Vegas. And then obviously there were additional girls that weren't even able to make it to the casting call, but were still trying to audition from abroad, right?
Mm.
So Chris went down there, organized a little dinner for some of the girls at the protein house. They all got together, got to hang out, meet each other. She's met with several of the girls after since. They've kind of done some pink belt fitness camps together, things like that. But she was interested in coaching it, and they just couldn't, for whatever reason, they were unable to kind of make the times work and the scheduling and all of that stuff go hand in hand. But it
Yeah.
ended up being a decent season. It was nice to see some girls get some exposure. That's always the nice thing. That's really what it's about, right?
I mean, yeah. I'm glad those girls got some exposure. I wish they just would have moved some of those girls up to the 145-pound division. You got Leah Letson, who was there. They're trying to make her a bantamweight. Macy Chazon is there. They trying to she has fought in bantamweight already, and she struggles to make the weight. I don't understand the thinking because the 145-pound division can be one of the top divisions. You got talent everywhere, and I made
I mean, it
videos on
really
this.
should be. A
God,
lot of
man.
people don't realize this, but like the night that Chris fought Holly Holm, man, Holly was heavier than Chris inside of the ring.
Yeah, I can tell she looked bigger than Chris.
And when Chris fought Amanda Nunez, Chris was only like 4 pounds heavier than Amanda Nunez. So what that's telling you is all of these girls, relative of weight class, or the amount that they're able to dehydrate themselves, or the ability that they have to rehydrate, relatively speaking, all of these girls are like within the same, give or take a few pounds. Sure, one might be able to make it a little bit lower, one might be able to make it to 135 dangerously, and the other one might only be able to make it to 139.
Hmm.
The other one might only be able to make it to 139 dangerously,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But at the end of the day, um, that's not really what we're trying to look at, right? If these two
no,
girls can compete in a weight, boxing, the nice thing about boxing is with all of those weight classes, it gives you an ability to make the fights happen, right?
yeah,
With those fights, you can actually make the fights happen. You can see the guys go up, you can see the guys go down because they don't have the difference of 10 pounds, right? You can
yeah,
meet somewhere in the middle. You can meet somewhere within 3 pounds of each other, right? Clarissa Shields, Cecilia Brockhurst. That fight
yeah, brackets,
doesn't
yeah,
necessarily have to go all the way to 160, whatever, and it doesn't have to go all the way to 145. They have the ability to kind of meet in the middle at that 150 range or the 147 range,
mm,
like
yes,
just give them a little bit of more opportunity. Um, yeah.
wow, man, guys, Ray done dropped like $10 million worth of knowledge, man. Yeah, I think y'all better go ahead and empty your pocketbooks, man, and your checks or your wallets. This guy just dumped a whole lot of like just information, guys. This stuff that probably casuals probably wouldn't even know, and he's telling us because I consider myself a diehard fan, but I also consider myself a casual when we talk about the inner workings of how things work. I'm a casual on that end. I'm a hardcore fan when I watch fights and I commentate on them, but I'm still a casual with the business side and everything that you're trying to describe right now. And I think the majority of us are. So we get in
Yeah.
it firsthand right now. Um, so the future of the 145-pound division. Do you think in your mind that they're going to aggressively build that division, or they're going to keep cheating us out of the division that we deserve to see?
I mean, they are adding girls to the weight class, right? So that gives you the idea that there is at least an initial plan to continue building the division um, forward. Uh, there's the Holly Holm fight going down in July. I think a lot depends on what happens with that fight. I mean, if Holly pulls that fight off, then of course they're going to keep that 145-pound division developed, um, because if they don't, you take away the championship that Amanda Nunez has, right?
Yeah,
So you're going to keep that.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. I think a lot of it kind of depends on, what happens with Cyborg on her fight July 27th, and
Mm.
what happens with Amanda Nunez on her fight, July 6th. I think that kind of is going to make a play into, what really is the long-term goals of that featherweight division. I don't think you have to be a genius to see that after 2 years, if there's not an established ranking in the weight class, and we've already established that a division like 125 is not really any deeper than the division at 145.
No, it's
I
not.
think I think you can see that there's certainly not a long-term plan for that in place. But there's a lot of fights at 145, that the fans never got to see.
Yeah.
Um, even at 140, you talk about those fights at 140. Okay, she fought Leslie Smith and Lena Landsberg, but
Yep.
now how much bigger is the Cyborg legacy and brand if those two fights at 140 were against Ronda Rousey and Misha Tate,
See.
right? And you talk about 145, okay, we got to see fights with Tanya Evinger.
Mm.
We got to see the fight with Yana Kunitskaya.
Yeah.
Um, and we got to see the fight with Holly Holm and Amanda Nunez. But now
Mm.
tell me how much sweeter is it at 145 if we get to see the fight with Jermaine Durandamy? Tell me how much greater that fight is at 145 if we get to see the fight with Megan Anderson. Tell me how much more
Well.
epic that is at 145 if we get to see Holly Holm and Kat Zingano. And then we still have, the Amanda Nunez fight that did happen.
Mm.
But the reality is, I just named 5 or 6 great fights, Misha, Ronda, GDR, Megan Anderson, Kat Zingano. Those are 5 fights that are epic, that are
Yeah.
big name fights. And instead, people kind of got Tanya Evinger, Lena Landsberg,
Leslie
Leslie
Smith.
Smith,
Yana Kunitskaya.
uh, Yana Kunitskaya.
Yeah.
Um, and really,
Mm.
that does 2 ways, right? It doesn't give Cyborg an opportunity. The story on Cyborg is, she never fought anybody. But the
Yeah, I
reality is,
keep hearing that crap, and I don't want to hear that. Yeah, she had, come on, these people don't know what they're talking about.
I could address that though,
Yeah,
right? Okay,
yeah.
you never fought anybody. Okay, who is the person responsible for making those fights? Okay, so we go
Hmm.
to Strike Force. You say she never fought anybody. Okay, you go
Falcarano.
to Elite XC. You say she never fought anybody. Okay, Elite XC, at the time she fought Shayna Baszler, at the time she fought her, Shayna Baszler was considered top 5 in the world.
That's what I've been telling.
Okay,
That's what I've been telling
fast
y'all.
forward, you go to Strike Force. The time she fought in Strike Force, um, she knocked through all the contenders, and then she took out the number 1 ranked Gina Carano.
She retired her. She retired her.
Fast forward, Invicta, she took out Marlos Kuns in the rematch. She took out Daria Bragamova.
Mm.
Um, she ran through that division so much so
Marlo's
that when
Coney.
they brought her to the UFC, we kind of played this game where they didn't want to bring up other girls from 145. Um, but now, when she went to the UFC, it's not her fault that the fight with Ronda, that the fight with Misha, that the fight with, the rematch with Holly, the fight with GDR,
Mm.
the fight with Megan Anderson, the rematch with Amanda Nunez. She can't make those fights. You make the fights that the promoter gives you. And so sometimes people want to put that blame on Cris, like she never fought anybody, but then they don't really want to realize who the promoter of her last 9 fights have been, right? And you can only be upset with the quality of the opponents or the name brand value of the opponents,
Mm.
not with the athlete, because the athlete, I mean, Cris has called out every one of those girls,
She
right?
can't make them
Repeatedly.
fight.
I mean, you can't. And not only that, you can't make the promoter make the fight, right? You got girls
Hell
like
no.
Megan Anderson that they wanted that fight
She
at
ducked
a
it.
time that people wanted to watch that fight, right?
Mm.
Now, okay, now she could have been 0-3 in the UFC. Now people aren't really interested in watching that fight. But, Megan Anderson and Holly Holm sold out an arena in Chicago. It was an interesting fight that really didn't make a whole lot of sense because what
Nope.
Holly Holm did was she killed the only contender at the time for Cris. When you took Megan Anderson and she lost to Holly Holm, and then you don't do the Cris Cyborg Holly Holm rematch, what it does is it makes Cris sit for 9 months before she gets an opportunity to fight Amanda Nunes. And when you look at a fighter, you can't just look at the fights they have, because you look at the social media matrix. How many followers do they have on Instagram? How many followers do they have on Twitter? How many followers do they have on Facebook, YouTube?
Hmm.
And then those matrix, what happens is how many people you gain a month, how far that goes up, how many likes, how many engagements you get. The more closer to a competition date that you get, the higher that traffic organically becomes. So if you're fighting once a year versus fighting every 90 days, it does a big difference as far as growing your following, growing your fan base, keeping your social media active, putting the interest back into the fans, right? So you look at an athlete like Israel Adesanya,
Mm.
great athlete, tremendous talent, nominated for an ESPY this year.
Wow.
He beat Kevin Gastelum,
Mm.
but outside of that, name another top 10 fighter he's beat this year at middleweight.
I can't. Let me see.
I mean, you
I
can look
can't
it
think
up.
any.
I mean, name a top 10 fighter that he's beat, right? And he's good, dude. I'm not saying he's not, dude. I got him on my fantasy MMA league. I'm not saying anything about that.
Yeah.
But to be fighter of the year, it's because you've been active, you've been fighting frequently, right? And then you got that opportunity. I mean, personally, I think Patrick Pitbull, the champ from Bellator, that's a guy
Mm.
that should be nominated over a guy that hasn't fought anybody that's fought one guy in the top 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So basically, what you telling us is more or less like it's pretty much like a popularity contest we got going on instead of what really
Well,
needs to
not only
happen.
that, it's a popularity contest, but like you don't control how many times you get to fight in the year. You don't get to control what events that you're fighting on that necessarily have the best lead in time. So those are other things that like people when they look at a division like featherweight, and you look at a division like flyweight, and you see the amount of times like somebody gets right back into the cage, somebody gets right back into the cage, somebody gets right back into the cage. Man, fighting is the best way to build your brand, right?
Yeah. Now, Ray, you mentioned some fighters, man, and I gotta tell you, man, some of those fighters you mentioned, man, they outright didn't want no work with Cris, man. Jermaine Durandame, she ran. Okay, let's just look. She ran from that fight. This girl was talking
I mean,
about a hand. She was talking about everything. Megan
I don't know
Anderson,
the real story on that. I really don't know. I know that
she ran from
when
that
that
damn fight.
was being negotiated, there was a really long time where the hand wasn't getting looked at in time, and
Uh,
but she's fought. Man, I've seen her fight in Thailand, dude. She's not scared to fight anybody. I can tell you that. I don't know what her
man,
side is with the UFC. I don't know what was going on with that. I know that she has a great job at the police
yeah,
department.
she a cop.
She was going through training at that time. I don't know if they were trying to force her at a time that she wasn't going to be able to take dates off.
But
Um,
it just seemed convenient. I'm just saying. She said that she had to get surgery on her hand, and she didn't get the surgery on her hand like she said. Because they asked her, they said, "Hey, will you fight Cris Cyborg now?" And first thing she said, well, hey, I got to get this surgery. And she didn't get the surgery. See, at first I was like, okay, I don't think she's afraid. But when I realized that the surgery didn't happen when she said it was going to happen, I said, nah, how's she going to explain this one? She got some explaining to
well,
do.
sometimes it's easier to say my hand hurts than to come forward and say they don't want to pay me, or I'm not getting enough money, or you
Okay.
know what, they made me a guarantee that I was going to get another fight. I mean, oh, girl's getting done pretty good right now, right? She's got to go to Sacramento and she's got to fight Aspen Ladd. That was the girl that they were going to give to Holly Holm, and then Holly Holm signed a new deal, and now all of a sudden Holly Holm's fighting Amanda Nunes for the belt. So I don't think they're doing Jermaine Durand and me any favors with that Aspen Ladd fight. I think that that's going to be a tough matchup. Where in reality, you know, I think GDR is already very well established. She's got a win over Holly Holm. She
Yeah.
just came back. She got a win over Raquel Pennington, who just
Yeah.
fought
For the title, she fought
Amanda
Amanda Nunes.
Nunes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't justify Holly Holm getting a fight over GDR other than publicity. You know, that's it. I mean, Holly Holm's a bigger star. She's going to sell more pay-per-views.
Yeah.
But as
Business.
far as if rankings were established, GDR would be the one that would be the next one in line, in my opinion, especially if Caitlin Vieira's not fighting, right?
Yeah. Well, she had surgery. She had a surgery, and she's back now. But it's gonna take some time for her to really get back into it and recover and rehab. But yeah, she had a pretty nasty surgery, man. She had a knee surgery. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But yeah, I would like to see her get a title shot. But I get it. See, now that I've been doing this a while, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's who gonna put their asses in the seats, and it's business move. That's just what they. But Ray, I don't understand this business move. Okay, now would you agree? Chris Cyborg probably. Well, it ain't a probably. She's the biggest women's MMA draw right now. That's currently fighting. She's the biggest draw. Why would Dana White go and just say those lies? Okay, and we all know because we were not fooled over here. But he would. It isn't hurting Chris's brand, hurting his brand.
I mean, I think that there's a little bit of truth to what you're saying there, and the fact that like if you're trying to promote a rematch, then you don't demote a brand, right? If you really want to make that rematch from a promoter standpoint, then you're trying to build the B side of that brand. You look at the night that Chris Cyborg got knocked out. I mean, you got Cyborg up there asking for a rematch, and it's being really undersold. You know, they're being said that it wasn't, you know, highly competitive. But imagine it if,
Fuck
like, GSP never got his immediate rematch with Matt Serra. I mean, that was
Yep.
a one-sided fight, dude. Matt Serra came in there, bounced his head up off of the mat for the entire time that fight was going on, right?
Yep.
But then if you don't give GSP that opportunity to go back and fight Matt Serra, then the legacy of GSP, where he goes on and he wins the welterweight belt right back and continues his undefeated streak and goes back up to middleweight and becomes a champ, that never really gets established, right? It just gets stopped cold in the tracks with Matt Serra, you know?
Yeah. God, dog. And you know what? Joanna Jacek. She got knocked out by Rose Namajunas. She got an immediate title shot. Okay.
Yeah,
Matter of fact,
yeah,
that was the next fight.
yeah. I mean,
So
it's a unique situation, right?
yeah,
Because
I
those
say.
those girls all have a lot of fights left on their deal when they're fighting or defending the belt. You
Mm.
know, and Chris has this fight, and I'm not really for sure exactly what the details are in her contract, but it's hard to let somebody fight when they've only got one fight on their deal for a world title. You know, it's like the whole Bret Hart in the WWE, right? They weren't going to
Oh, the
let
screw
him
job.
just go and wrestle somewhere else when he had the world title. That doesn't happen. What world do you live in, right?
So they took the belt from
So,
him. Yeah.
but it's interesting, you know. You see a guy like Scott Coker, what he's doing with Risen right now, Ryzen.
Wait a minute.
Um,
Wait a minute. Rising or Bellator.
right, you got Scott Coker working with Sakaki Bada, where they
Okay.
brought over the Ryzen champion. And first they brought the Bellator champion over, then they brought the Ryzen champion over, then the Ryzen champion now has both the Risen and the Bellator belt at the 135-pound division. You
Oh,
know,
okay.
so that's a unique situation. That happens in boxing where a fighter will collect multiple promotions, belts, but traditionally that's not really a model that we see in MMA.
Mm-mm.
And it would be interesting to see, if just because if Chris left as a free agent or something, the idea that that rematch couldn't be made. I mean, that rematch should be made, right? Fans deserve that rematch. I think
Yeah.
that's something that is imagine if Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury never rematched.
Yeah, that'd be bad because that's the fight we want to see, and they know it's a big fight, so they're letting that fight marinate. So Fury's over on ESPN, and he's fighting this Tom Schwartz's of the world, while Deontay Wilder is gonna have to face Luis Ortiz first before he can get his hands on Tyson Fury again. So there
Which
you go.
Luis Ortiz is going to be a tough fight. That's no gimme, right?
Yeah,
That's not a gimme. He's a
yeah,
little older than the last time you fought him, but that's not going to be a gimme.
yeah. Luis Ortiz almost knocked him out, man. Hey, it's a risky fight, man. It's a risky
Hey,
fight, and Wilder willing to
till
do it.
this day.
To this day. Damn, y'all. Ray Elbe said to this day. Damn. This is good. This shit. Oh man. I'm having a lot of fun with this, man. Okay, so now a part of this, I'm gonna let these guys ask the questions, man. And okay, ask some good questions. Don't ask this man a dumb question, okay? He's an intellectual man. Don't ask him any stupid questions. Let's see. Okay, so this question comes from Mr. Dennis Espinoza. Okay, this is a Dennis Breaking News Espinoza. Um,
Nice. What's up, Dennis? Dennis from Texas. We met him in Dallas Fort Worth.
Ah, Dennis, he know you. God dang, this man's everywhere. He says, how about Cris only sign a one fight contract after the next fight after she wins, and if Nunes wins, then beating Nunes would give her great leverage. So your thoughts on that?
That sounds like a great idea, but who would do that as a promoter, right? Who's going to give somebody that type of leverage over the promotion? She tried. People don't realize this. She's fighting now, right? July,
Hmm.
but she tried to make that fight for Amanda Nunes, and she also tried to make an immediate rematch clause in there, right? Where if you lose the fight, that there's a second path. Because the problem with Amanda Nunes is she can choose to fight at 135, just like Ronda Rousey chose to fight at 135.
Oh, here go the truth, Ronda Rousey fans. This is what
You know
we've
what
been
I
telling
mean?
y'all. It's what we've been telling y'all for years. Truth, right?
So
Mm,
the thing about it is that, right? If you don't put a mandatory second fight at 145 pounds in writing, then you're kind of like on the hope, wish, maybe plan, right? I hope she wants to do this.
mm,
I wish she'd like to do this. Maybe they'll want to do this, right? But
mm.
you also have to look at kind of body language of how things are being put together. Like when you were trying to sell something, you know, you don't say, man, this fight's not going to happen. If you want the fight to happen, you say, hey, look, dude, we got to get a new deal worked out to make this fight happen. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't think that in a real world, anybody's going to let Chris sign a one fight deal to have the rematch. With from a marketing standpoint, if Chris Cyborg never lost, the myth of the unbeaten fighter is there forever.
Mm.
They need that, right? If Chris Cyborg loses, they got the one loss that they needed to have a claim at the world's best fighter, right? Right now, everybody says Amanda Nunes is the world's best fighter ever, the number one of all time, right? And she certainly, look, dude, you beat Misha, you beat Ronda, you beat Cyborg, you beat Valentina, you beat Holly Holm. You got to certainly, you've had probably a 3-year run where those 3 years you can certainly say that you were the best pound for pound fighter in the world for those 3 years. But we can also go back and if we look at Chris Cyborg and we say, hey, look, Chris lost to Amanda.
Mm.
I can say this, she did. And are we both in agreement that Amanda Nunes is a world class fighter?
Yeah.
as far as her results.
Yeah.
So there's
Absolutely.
nothing embarrassing with losing to a world class fighter because you're losing to somebody that is at the same caliber as you, right? But
Yes.
now, if I ask you, uh, a Sarah DeLelio,
Yep.
Alexis Davis, like if I ask you, are these fighters world class fighters?
They
You're not
pretty.
going to say yes.
They pretty
You're not going
decent.
to say yes.
I wouldn't say the best in the world. They're not. They're not like Alexis Davis. Not the worst, but she's declined. Her skill sets. She's declined, and I think her better years are past her. But
But at no point would you consider her an iconic, historic name in the sport, right?
she a trailblazer though. I mean,
I
I'm
mean,
gonna give her the trailblazer mantra.
I don't have a problem with that, right? But when
Yeah,
we're naming the best point guards ever in the history of the NBA, Sam Cassell was good,
yeah,
but we ain't putting Sam Cassell in the same category as Magic Johnson, John
Stockton.
Stockton. I mean, some of like the real, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so Amanda Nunez, she could be on the Mount Rushmore. But you start looking at like Anna Maria India, Sarah DeLelio, and Alexis Davis. These are
Catherine.
fighters that sure you lost to them earlier in your career. I mean that definitely counts for something.
Yeah,
But when you say the greatest of all time, you can't make that decision just based on a period of time. You have to base it on the entire career, right? So when you see a fighter like BJ Penn, at one point, dude, I would have said BJ Penn was the greatest lightweight of all time.
yeah, yeah.
But
BJ
I can't
too old.
base that until your career's over. And when I see the full span of what you were able to accomplish at the peak, at the high, at the valley, at the duration,
Hmm.
I say, dude, you are certainly a legend. You're a pioneer. You're a trailblazer. I mean, for me, dude, I remember BJ Penn as the baddest man on the planet. So I'm a little bit partial about that. But I couldn't vote him as pound for pound top five in the world now. I mean, I couldn't do that, right? But I certainly could have at one point in his career. You know what I mean? So it's always a nice, fun fan debate about who's the best ever and this and that. But I think that that's one of those things you can't just judge Amanda and say, okay, well, she's UFC champion and she beat all these people in the UFC because she also was never Invicta champion. She was also never Strikeforce champion. I mean, she was in those promotions. She didn't win the championships.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you got to say though, man, she got a nice healthy resume. I'll definitely give her that. I think.
Dude, I tell you what, it is the most impressive run, I think, of a female fighter that we've ever seen in the history of the sport. I mean, those names, you
Yep.
got Cyborg, you got Valentina, you got Misha, you got Ronda Rousey. I mean, that's a murderer's row. And if you add Holly Holm into the mix of that, I mean, you certainly, as far as the most impressive wins, but you also have to think, some of those fighters, man, how many of those fighters, what would have happened if Chris would have got a fight with Misha? What would have happened if Chris would have got a fight with Ronda? What would have happened with those fights?
They would have downplayed. I'm gonna tell you what would have happened. They would have tried to downplay those victories because it was Chris Cyborg. I'm just trying to tell you this is how they would have downplayed those and said, "Oh well, Chris was too big." But
Right, right, right.
that's what they would have said. I'm telling you this.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Chris was still benefiting from performance enhancing drugs she used 10 years ago. But you got Chael Sonnen over here saying he's the best drug cheat ever. I still can't understand that. But it
Yeah.
it's always different. There's a different set of rules for Chris Cyborg, and then there's everybody else. So, I, of course we would know. I was like, oh yeah, if she beat all those people, she didn't have the opportunity to. I think a lot of those people didn't want to fight her, and
I mean, I think it dollars make sense. And if it don't make dollars, then it don't make sense, right? So
yeah,
who knows really what those values were? It's like that's the whole other thing about it is it they didn't want to fight it for how much money. That's the
Yeah.
other part of it, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm not that. Maybe I don't want to do that for 50,000. Maybe I don't want to do that for 100,000. But you pay me half a million, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, you go get in there. I think a lot of people would step in there and fight Chris for half a million. Now the question is if they're gonna walk out of there conscious. Now that's but when you wake up, you'll be half a million
Hey,
dollars richer. Shit, I get in there. I be
hey,
like,
well, 250,000 richer after the taxes, but you know what it
yeah,
is,
man, yeah. I take that fight. I take a
right?
knockout. Hell, nothing wrong with a knockout. Okay,
Right.
guys. I'm sorry, guys. I've been enjoying this conversation. Guys, okay. Questions. Crap. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So the Scott Coker question came up, and guys, he said that Chris is really focused on Felicia Spencer. So I guess we'll ask you as the guy that understands the business end. Do you think Scott Coker is prepared to offer Chris a substantial amount of money since he's saying that he's backed by Viacom?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I think that there's good value in the Chris Cyborg brand. Um, I think it would be the next thing would be the Amanda Nunes Chris Cyborg rematch. I think that's the fight fans deserve. That's the fight everybody should be able to see. That should be the fight that should be going on right now. I mean, Amanda shouldn't be fighting Holly, and Chris shouldn't be fighting Felicia Spencer. They should be rematching each other in Vegas International Fight Week, right? Like, would it be the biggest fight that could be made? But that's
So,
just not the way those things went down. So
so
I don't know.
do you just want to pull your hair out sometimes thinking about this, or well, you can't pull his hair. He don't have any hair. But I mean, do you just like, damn, do you guys get
No,
frustrated?
we've got a great household, dude. We got, a kid that's here from Brazil that's just doing wonderful in school. We've got a great family setting here. And I mean, it is what it is. It just rotates around, and hopefully, the problem is that she just kind of wanted to stay active. I think that's the key, right? You want to stay active.
Yeah, you got to keep kids active, man. You can't let them sit because they'll find a mess. They'll find some mess to get into. So you got to keep them busy all the time. Yeah, man. Well, you and Chris, I'm sure y'all will find out. Y'all find some stuff for her to do. Like she plays soccer, right? And I
Um,
see.
she's been she's been running. Yeah, she's been running. She's been doing half marathons and 10K, 8K, 5K. I don't know, a bunch of them, but she's been running.
I saw her in the
Got
gym a few times with Chris on videos.
Yeah, she got a little anger management issues.
I mean, now is Chris thinking of actually having this girl get in there and fight?
I don't think so. It's not really the best industry to put a kid into. It's not the best industry to grow up in. I mean, if you got other opportunities, it's always better to try to pursue them. So we really put a focus in academics, but there's some things in martial arts that you can learn, that help you improve the quality of your life and really just give you a little bit more focus, a little more dedication. And everybody should have the ability or the confidence to know that if they really had to, that they could defend themselves, right? So
Yeah.
some of that's just giving her some of the basics needed to start high school.
God, dog. Man, Ray Elbe got to figure it all out. Okay, I'm only going to ask this man two more questions, okay? Two. Okay, all right. One question was, okay, so what do you think about Chris? And who asked this? I think it was George Page. What do you think about Chris and how she fought Amanda the first time? And he said he used the word reckless.
um, you know what? I've watched that fight, and we have a very organized, structured scouting report of kind of what we thought was the best approach to going into that fight.
Mm,
Um, if you look at Amanda Nunez, you can see patterns in her fighting style already, right? A couple of them. She's a rhythm fighter, front forward rhythm step. If you watch her, it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. She's got a front rhythm step, and traditionally, when you watch, she doesn't hide the kick. She doesn't punch before the kick. It's one kick. It's one punch. It's one kick. It's one punch. And if you watch that fight with Chris back one more time, you'll actually see that when Cris uh, was not engaging, Amanda had a hard time landing that overhand right. I think she threw it like 3 times in the first
Mm,
20 seconds of that fight. It's kind of like a lunging overhand. And they were nowhere near the target. Um, she landed that low kick on Cris. Chris's stance was a little bit square. It got to the outside of the calf. Cris got aggressive, went forward. And when she started to go forward and started to get aggressive, that's when you notice that right hand start to come over the top.
mm,
She had great timing on it as Cris closed the distance. When you watch those fights with Amanda and you watch, Amanda and Ronda, Amanda and Misha,
mm.
when those girls lost, those girls kind of lost going backwards, right? When Cris lost, she kind of lost biting, going down and going forward on her mouthpiece, and it just kept aiding into Amanda's ability to keep landing that right hand. Bam, bam, bam. Because she kept the forward pressure even when she was rocked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like she was.
so I think a rematch, one of the nice things about this is you're going to be able to see Holly's style against Amanda. And Holly is going to have a style very similar to Valentina. She'll be long, she'll stay on the range, she'll point and move. Valentina was just a little bit too short on her punching distance
Mm-hmm.
to really be able to kind of push forward when she needed it without being hit with a heavy overhand from Amanda the same way that kind of Cris got caught. And I think Holly's going to be a little bit longer. And Holly's
Yeah,
not afraid of letting the crowd boo, you know?
she sure isn't.
And it'll be interesting to see Styles make fights. And we had certainly went into the fight with the idea of pressing. Cris had made the comment, she wants to see her pressure. And Holly's not going to go into the fight with that same strategy. And so it is nice as far as from a rematch perspective. You'll be able to see kind of what type of dynamics Holly brings when she counters back with the counter striker in this matchup, right?
So,
So,
so you and my man Jason Perillo, y'all gonna be watching this fight heavily, and see y'all gonna
dude,
be.
Jason's so busy. He's got a gang of guys. He's got a gang of guys getting ready for fights. That guy's always watching fights live, cage side.
Man, I used to imitate him, man. He's funny, man. He's a funny character, man. And
Dude, he's one of the realest coaches in the game. Like, there's a lot of guys that are just hanging on, and Perillo will fucking shoot it straight. He'll
yeah,
keep it 100. He's been in the game a really long time, so he's seen the whole life cycle of an athlete. He's seen
yeah,
them just making it. He's seen them on the rise. He's seen them become world champion. He's seen them lose the belt, and he's actually seen them come back and win it again, right? With
yeah,
some of the athletes he's worked with. So it's just a ridiculous amount of knowledge as far as being in the field, right?
yeah, yeah. I think he's very underrated, man. It was funny, man. It was a Twitter feed, and he read a comment, and it was funny. And the guy said that Chris needs to kick him in the balls, cause
Oh yeah,
they do that little slapping motion. And
yeah.
one guy said, "Well, Chris needs to kick you in the balls." He goes, "Kick me in my balls? Well, fuck you, you pisshead." Like that's what he was doing. I'm like,
Dude,
damn.
that was a pretty good impersonation of him, actually.
Trust me, man. I've done some skips on Jason Perillo, man. Some skits, man. I kind of mess around, but man, Ray. I can't keep you all night, man. The
Dude,
last question, Ray, and I know this gonna mean the most to you, man. This is it. Aquarius. She said, "When are you and Chris Cyborg gonna tie the knot?"
yeah,
Uh
I
oh.
think I think we got a great relationship at the house, and we got our focus right now on our kids and our family, and yeah, we have plans, and we'll kind of see how that thing plays out. It's for us, we still keep a good amount of our life private. We haven't decided really where we're going to do the wedding at and this and that. But yeah, it'll be coming soon, I'm sure.
Man, Cris Cyborg's fiance, Mr. Ray Elbe, guys. Tune in. Okay, July
Hey,
27th. Cris Cyborg versus Felicia Spencer, Edmonton, Canada. Okay, guys, you
hey,
can't miss
guys,
this.
if you are not subscribed to the Cyborg Nation YouTube channel, hit up the Cris Cyborg. Subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow it, guys. We just passed 40,000. What you can do to help us, grab our last video, copy the link, and take that copy to 3 friends and send it via WhatsApp and tell them to join the Cyborg Nation with a like and subscribe to Cris Cyborg on YouTube. Hey,
Hey, number one with a bullet. Guys, if y'all don't do what this man says, I'm not going to talk to any of y'all. Okay, I'm done. Okay, Mr. Ray, Ray, man, Ray, yeah, you want to give your team any shouts, man? You want to, I don't know, man, you want to,
not a great day, guys. I mean, we appreciate the support. July 27th. Hopefully, it'll be the next fight, and then Cris will be able to be in a position where we can try to make this Amanda Nunez rematch happen.
yes,
I think
yeah.
it's going to be a great event. We are getting set probably early next week to drop the new fight T-shirt. So if you're wanting to buy that, you can get it at chriscyborg.com. It's not up yet, but the new merchandise will be up this week.
And it's on the screen, guys. The chriscyborg.com website. For those of you guys that can't spell too well, I spelled it for you, okay? www.chriscyborg.com, guys. There it is. Man, well, guys, Ray, I'm thankful, man. Thank you for coming in, man. I mean, golly, man, almost an hour with Ray Ellerby, man. I'm kind of in shock, man, because, you and Cris, you guys to me are larger than life, man. And,
Dude, we appreciate the support. I mean,
gosh, man.
it's guys like you that make a platform that's accessible for the fans, and they get an opportunity to follow along with the story. And that's what made the 145-pound division, was the voice of the fans. So Cyborg Nation, dude, changing the world.
Cyborg Nation everywhere, y'all. Cyborg Nation, man. Ray Ellerby, man. I'm out. Ray, man, you got to give me a drop, man. Can you say this is Ray Ellerby? You're watching Coach Shelton Harrison.
This is Ray Elbe, and you are watching Coach Sheldon Harrison.
Oh man, come on, man. How you gonna say my name wrong, Ray? Ray, you know what, man? I'm disappointed in you, man. Man, nah,
You gonna put me on the spot like that? Come
nah,
on now,
nah.
you're
Hey,
killing me, dog.
hey. Now you lucky I didn't give you a quiz, man. You lucky I didn't give you a quiz. I normally give out quizzes, man, but I ain't do it today, man. I said I can't do that to Ray Elby, man. I can't do it. Okay, can't put him on the spot, man. But it's Coach Shelton Harrison, Ray. Coach Shelton
All
Harrison.
right, let's do this one more time.
Let's go.
Tell me what you want. Say it to me one more time. Say it to me one
Hey,
more time.
say this is Ray Elby, and you're watching Coach Shelton Harrison.
All right.
That exciting voice that you get, man, when you're talking about Cris.
This is Ray Elbe, and you are watching Coach Shelton Harrison.
Hell yeah. Hey, damn, that's number one with a bullet. Yeah. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate you, man.
All right, brother. Appreciate you. Till
Later, man.
next time.